Hello and welcome to 1MD Live. We are back again with Dr. Harish Shetty and Dr. Shashank Joshi will soon join us. But I would like to start with a very interesting tweet that I read on Dr. Shetty's Twitter handle. And I would like to just put it out in front of you. Dr. Shetty, you mentioned it's fearodemic. That is what we are experiencing. The fearodemic is normal in a pandemic of this magnitude. The fearodemic manifests in different intensities. Following strategies will work. Now, what are these strategies? I would like you to just explain. And what is this fearodemic?
Absolutely. Fearodemic is the fear which happens in every disaster. It's not generalized anxiety disorder. It's not panic disorder. It's not anxiety. It's a general feeling of uneasy calm. It's a general feeling of apprehension, which occurs. And it occurs in different intensities. And that is something is which we have to accept as normal. But there are ways of handling it, my dear friends. And I always said that in the past also. Be engaged in small activities. People say distraction is not right, but I'm telling you, distraction creates space to calm ourselves and think creatively. Stay connected with loved ones inside the house or outside the house who are keen to help each other. Fears dissipate to a great extent. Stay away from whiners. Sorry to call that whiners. I'm very sorry about it. But what is important is they need counseling and their loved ones to help them. Volunteer in activities around the pandemic. It actually generates optimism. Limit exposure to news and so that your negative thoughts go down. Hugs at home. Remember hugs, HUGs, hugs at home. And yoga dissolves exaggerated fears. Exercise helps in bringing down the fearodemic. Normal sleep and diet adds value. Laughter, meaningless laughter. Laughing at yourself, laughing at the virus, laughing at anything. Meaningless. You should be a little mad to be normal, a little crazy to be normal. My mother asked me, are you crazy? I said, yes. You have to be a little crazy to be normal. Prayers also give courage, and that is so important. If you have lost a loved one, share your feelings with family and help them to do the same. Family that cries together heals together. Carry out family rituals as much as possible after the demise. Avoid curious relatives and the Sherlock Holmes types who want every detail of the loss from you. Remember, all those guys will aggravate your anxiety and aggravate theirs. If you're in quarantine, remember one thing: be actively connected with sensible friends and loved ones. Remember the word sensible. Those who do not aggravate your anxiety, those who can make you laugh, those who can talk about other things, and those who can keep you engaged. Light chats with families aids recovery. Light exercise, watching TV, and comedy videos will help change brain chemistry. Once you finish, share these hope stories across to all those who would want to listen. So, fearodemic experience may be unique for each one, and you may have innovated a lot of new methods to deal with the same. Share it here or share it with all your friends. Coping skills can vary with age, culture, support, and available education, financial state, etc. So, fearodemic is real. You can manage it and do not succumb to it. See that you're connected, and the fearodemic will slowly leave you as the disaster abates.
Wonderful. How wonderfully put in words, Dr. Shetty. Thank you so much for that. And for all the viewers, I would just like to, we'll just put the tweet in the comment. Please do take the time and just read it. It's very simple and practical things that we can follow that Dr. Shetty has just told us. Thank you so much again. The second thing that I wanted to ask you was we are seeing with the time that it's been a year and a half almost now that we are seeing doctors are fatigued. They have been doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, even frontline workers. But specifically in healthcare, they have been there day in, day out. We are seeing videos of oxygen shortage and staff shortage, etc. In this situation, how do doctors actually deal with their mental sanity?
Well, there are two or three things. Communication is the key. If you ask me what is communication, there are many types of communication. There is the reflexive communication. Reflexly you answer. I will give you an example. हाँ, पेशेंट ठीक है, अभी उसका इतना ऑक्सीजन है, and these are the drugs which are going through, and this is what it is. See, there is no reaction here. There is just a bland reflex reply to a question, or a reflex update to a close relative, or a patient whom you are seeing. Then there is a reactive communication. कोविड है, कुछ भी हो सकता है, and that is a reactive communication. Then there's a reflective communication. You reflect and then you answer peacefully with a tone that is appropriate, and that I think is very important. The patient is getting better, yet there are certain concerns. He is critical but stable, etc., etc. Then there is a refractory communication. You postpone and do not answer. You procrastinate and don't answer, and you answer in half sentences and a few words, and the person across gets very confused. And the next one is a rhetorical communication, which means you just reflect on what he has said, and say things in a very rhetorical manner. So the secret here to maintain a reflective communication, see, I said there is a reflexive communication, there's a reflective communication, there's a reactory communication, there's a refractory communication, there's a rhetorical communication. To manage the reflective communication, your tone has to be very good. And for the tone to be very good, you need to do a lot of other things to maintain that tone, because tone cannot be maintained just by the vocal cords. Vocal cords are in your control. They are in the control of your brain, which means all the residual feelings you have, difficult feelings, troubled feelings, good feelings, needs to be cleansed every day. Just as we wash our bodies every day with a bath, emotional cleansing and emotional hygiene is as important as physical hygiene. And when you get into the state of emotional hygiene, what is very important is see that you cleanse yourself through your colleagues by sharing however you feel. Actually, using black humor at times is very normal. You cleanse yourself with your mentors, you cleanse yourself with your loved ones, and you also cleanse yourself with yourself. And how do you do it with yourself? Self talk. As the narrative of the world is bombarding your brain, your self talk is the antidote. Your self talk is the Brahmastra of Prabhu Sri Ram, which neutralizes the negative narrative of the world, that is the arrows of Sri Ravana. So, self talk is what you tell yourself in the morning. I'm finding meaning in life. I feel nice to work with these patients. I'm creating history. I'm saving lives. Even if you don't feel so, start saying it. When you start saying it, you start believing it. It's like arranged marriage. You start saying, I love you to your spouse when you don't know him or her at all. And when you start saying it, love slowly seeps in. So start saying it. Also, even if you don't get breaks of 1 week or 2 days or one day, take micro breaks between patients. That means micro pranayama between patients also is of very great value. Apart from that, what is also very important is little exercise. Even if it's 15 minutes up and down the house is good. And as you sleep, what you tell yourself is also very important, that I have done my duty today. I have done my best as much as I can. I have learned probably from my mistakes or from the mistakes of the patient, and I am improving every day. Disaster medical activity is accelerated learning. You learn in a year what you would have learned in a decade, and that I think is important. And that is something you need to also realize. What you learn in 1 year is what you learn in a decade.
Absolutely. What a wonderful advice. And the other side of this is the general public, and in that, specifically parents. Right, parents have been dealing with this at a colossal effect that they are having, who have young children, and also those who have teenagers. So, what I wanted to ask you is, how do parents deal with this now that we are seeing it? That first wave has gone, second wave is still there with us very much. School doesn't seem to be starting, exams don't seem to be happening. uh, they're working from home, handling all the things, including house chores as well as children. How do they handle this, Dr. Shetty?
As somebody said on the Twitter,
Hmm.
Madhvi Raj, she said, we are in Amrit Manthan. Amrit
Hmm.
Manthan. But I'll tell you how to start schools right away.
Okay.
As soon as this COVID wave abates, let us start our schools. And let me tell you how to start your schools. Sanitize your schools, check all your teachers, and start one division from 5th to 10th. Let me give you an example 5th to 10th. Let the 5th standard come for 2 hours. Spread them out in different classrooms. Of course, they need to be first examined and checked. Which means if there are 10, 15 kids inside the class and they're spread across various classrooms, only 5th standard, as an example, 2 hours of school, 1 hour of studies and 1 hour of fun. If you have a ground, take them to the ground, let them have fun. Then they go back after 2 hours. Then, after a gap of 1 hour, the 6th standard comes and does the same for 2 hours. And after a gap for 1 hour, if your school runs for 6 to 7 hours, the 7th standard, but at least 5th and 6th. Next day it's 7th and 8th, next day it's 9th and 10th. So once a week, at least the child comes to school, meets his friends, smiles at them, laughs at them, teases them, runs around the playground if you have. If you do not have a playground, have physical activities inside the classroom. This is absolutely essential. And all this has to be voluntary. India is on a safe mode. Nobody wants to take risks. Doctors will tell you, don't start schools, it will spread. A doctor on the TV the other day said, it is a super spreader because you keep your windows closed, etc., etc. Come on now. We have to start schools. If you can start shops, if you can
Hmm.
have people traveling on the road all the time with their masks, let us start schools. So let us experiment in a few schools, the pilot of starting the school for every standard once a week. And this is how we need to start schools. As far as teenagers are concerned, what is very important also is I've seen in the
Hmm.
last 1 year, teenagers who are volunteering are doing much better.
Right.
Teenagers who are saying why me are doing very badly. Teenagers who whine that why can I not go to this university or that university or North India where I've taken
Hmm.
admission, they do very badly. Why me is a guarantee for bad mental health.
Hmm.
Why not me to contribute in the disaster recovery gives you good mental health. So a
Right.
lot of children who probably aren't doing well in
Hmm.
studies or have been very lazy in the past have suddenly found meaning in life, have suddenly
Hmm.
started shooting up in their interest in academics, in their interest in helping the community around, in interest in being active and proactive to see that people wear masks, in the interest that they help the elders in the building, in the churches, in the slums, and in the locality. You know what? A lot of kids who appear to be lazy, not doing anything, or not up to the mark, they seek challenges and they
Hmm.
actually get up and
Right.
take this challenge head on,
Hmm.
so that they are beneficial to the communities. Remember one line: those who feel that they can contribute to the community do much better than those who feel that why me? Why me is a guarantee for bad mental health.
Absolutely, Dr. Shetty. Well said. In that, I would still want to ask you further a little bit. What about this so-called, the damage that has been caused to especially the children who are specially abled or who are at home and on a different learning path? How would you say that the damage that has been done in this 1.5 year, how do they recoup? How do they recover from all of this?
Absolutely, I think that's one of the biggest issues with us. Those children who have special needs, if they get COVID, they should be admitted with their caretaker,
Right.
because ward boys and nurses do not know what to do when a child with autism shouts and screams suddenly, or a child with autism
Absolutely.
starts moving around the ward suddenly. So they need to be taken care. They need to be really admitted with their caretakers. And
Hmm.
we need to have a special list of those children who have been admitted so that the doctors who are treating them are aware of what are the
Hmm.
other conditions these kids have. At the
Hmm.
same time, I would say the special schools need to start.
Okay.
Yes, they need to start. Is somebody listening?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to play safe. I'm going to say they need to start, which means what? Which means sanitize the school. A special school is also a very small school, very few
Hmm.
teachers, very few staff. Let them be checked and let them attend school at least for half the time they were attending before,
Hmm.
after checking the children also. And let the state take the cost for checking the school,
Right.
seeing that the environment is clean, and also doing an RT-PCR or a rat test for children. Let them start half the time which they have been used to,
Hmm.
and that's something which is necessary. Let a doctor follow up these kids in the school. Let one of the government doctors be assigned one school and see to it that the executive health officer of the state, of the district, of the city, or the taluka takes care of these kids. And
Hmm.
there will be accidents, one or two, and this also should be completely voluntary.
Right.
They were going to remedial educators, they were going to their psychiatrists
Hmm.
or their psychologists. Let us see to it that these kids are
Hmm.
also examined virtually or live by their doctors, and let them get back to normal life as soon as they can. Maybe a little after the wave abates. And this is some. So we need to start our schools and our special school at the earliest. And the same model which I mentioned for schools should be used
Hmm.
for colleges.
College level.
Every
Okay.
doctor says don't start. Why? Because he's scared that his word will fail. If something happens, they'll catch him, they'll hang him. Are Baba. Of course, they will catch you and hang you. Maybe, but what is important is every era has its problems and every era needs to find their own solutions. We can't keep the children at home for too long. We
Correct.
need to have creative ways of helping them interact. Schools and colleges are not only meant for learning, they are meant for socialization and good mental health.
Absolutely. So well said. And Dr. Shetty, now moving from that to people's general, you had written an article I recently read, which was about apathy, empathy, and antipathy. So I wanted to know what is this difference between them, and then the way you put it was very stark. I was shocked to read that is the more people die, the less we care, and that is so striking. So if you can just please explain what the differences are.
I think what is very important to understand is that human being is not changing. Human being is the same. What's happening is when things around are too devastating for his psyche or her psyche, when things around are too strong for his psyche or her psyche, the psyche adapts. And when I say the psyche adapts, which means if a mother has her brother hospitalized in a COVID ward or at a place which is far away from the house, she wants to go and meet the doctor. Remember, not meet the patient, meet the doctor, and the doctor has called him or her to for consultation, not virtual, for live. And she wants to go. The husband stops her and says, "You should not go. You might get COVID." And she says, "He's my brother, and the doctor has called me, and I need to go." He says, "You should not go because you'll get COVID." So this is an adaptive reaction of the father, also due to concern, but also due to excessive anxiety. So the apathy is an interpretation of the society of this behavior which the husband would have shown. And if the husband really screamed and shouts, "You cannot go at all. I will never talk to you if you go there. Are you crazy? Are you mad?" That is antipathy. And the husband says, he manages anxiety, and he says, yes, take care, but you can go, but see to it that you take all precautions. It's important that you go and talk to your doctor, and that is empathy. And empathy may change qualitatively in a disaster, and it may get converted into apathy, antipathy, and sometimes they say pati. So the qualitative change in the response of human compassion can happen, and though it happens because of the nature of the catastrophe, because of the nature of the environment, because of the surroundings that is beyond human comprehension. The qualitative changes that happens may lead to an interpretation that there's apathy, there's antipathy, and there is less empathy. What is also very important to understand is when the anxiety goes down, compassion and empathy increases. When anxiety is high, probably the empathy may be also very, very low. And if for all of us who are in the show, let me tell you that empathy is always unequal, which means I might take my son to a doctor, but I might tell my friend the address of the doctor for him to take his son. I might not go with his son. Empathy also depends on your mental state. If your mental state is down, you may not be able to empathize, or you may excessively empathize with the person. Empathy also is very dependent on your age, on the environment in which you live. And say, for example, a son is very compassionate to his sister, but once he gets married and has children, he's more compassionate to his own children and not as responsive to his siblings as is responsive to his children. As he grows much older, he is more responsive to other members of the family. So empathy has qualitative changes in terms of expression of empathy, and that is very visible. So what is necessary for all of us is to manage our fearodemic so that we can be reasonably empathic to the environment around us. And if we manage anxiety, there will be a balance, and there'll be compassion, which is appropriate, and there'll be equanimity and samantha, reasonable. I'm not saying we need to we need to be Buddhas, and that really probably helps. And here comes Dr. Shashank Joshi with his cup of Bonvita. No, no, not Bonvita. Coffee. And Shashank, let me ask you straight. There has been reports that, and Anirudh also was asking me, that remdesivir and plasma can also cause mutation of the virus, and it was announced by a senior medical doctor in a lecture and also in a tweet, and probably in a video interview, that just like antibiotics, Anirudh, can cause resistance when it is used indiscriminately. Is it true for antiviral drugs, like, or antiviral strategies?
So, Guru Anna, in times of science, we should talk of absolute and hardcore science. So first thing is that as far as plasma is concerned, plasma virtually has no role in the current management of COVID. It started as a very age-old therapy, and for moderate and severe COVID, the randomized control trial. See, the highest level of evidence in evidence-based medicine is a trial called RCT, randomized control trials. And in those randomized control trials, plasma does not work at all. However, they had kept a little leeway that high titer plasma, which means if the titer of antibodies in the plasma is very high, in mild disease, and if it is used in the first 7 days, it may have a role. Unfortunately, a trial was published this week which showed that even that doesn't work. So more or less plasma is out. That was the first thing. Nature published a paper which was not a very high, it raised the question mark that plasma may be responsible for mutants. So the word is may, it is not absolute. So that probability that plasma may be leading to a variant of concern cannot be ruled out. But remember what causes variants of concern. Variants of concern and variants of interest are changes within the viral structure on the spike protein, which are having some changes. It is like wearing a shirt different day. And therefore, there is going to be variation on the spike protein. which may become variant of interest, which is quite common. Okay. For example, on the spike protein, there was a little glucose coating. It's a very common thing, but it is not going to cause any significance. But some of the variants of concern, like the ones which are variants of concern from India, are called B617.1, 617.2, 617.3. These are the three variants of concern from India, of which of particular interest is 617.2, which is predominantly seen and started from Maharashtra. And this probably is a more transmissible strain. That means the virus multiplies fast and spreads fast. But we don't know whether it is more virulent. It could even be less virulent. So that is all we know as far as the plasma is concerned. Plasma doesn't work in modern COVID. On compassionate grounds, in high titers, in early disease, it could have worked, but that also looks unlikely. So the probability of plasma working in COVID is almost out. You can cross out plasma, and therefore its indiscriminate use should be avoided. Can it cause variants of concern? We don't know the answer. There is a probability and a possibility raised in a hypothesis generating article in one of the scientific journals, but not from India. And we don't have documentary proof for the same. So that days rest on that. As far as remdesivir is concerned, I think the statement is irresponsible, if you ask me, because we have to go by data-driven science. So there is no data to show that use of remdesivir in a set of patients was then, after remdesivir was given, there was a viral culture done, and that there was either a resistance. Because if there is an antiviral drug, then we can do a proper culture and grow and see whether remdesivir has stopped working, or whether there has been a mutation and remdesivir has to be attributed to it. Unless and until we prove cause and effect, to attribute it is inappropriate. But remdesivir has another challenge, and that challenge I must explain very clearly. Remdesivir's use has to be restricted use. It is an emergency use authorization. It is an Ebola virus repurposed drug. It should not be used in home. It should be used in the first 10 days of active replication. It has to be used in moderate to severe disease. It has to be used only when the person needs oxygen. Usually is used with a steroid. Sometimes if steroids cannot be given to individual, there is a drug called baricitinib, which is a JAK kinase inhibitor. It can be used with that. And when we use it with these drugs, you can get some results where their clinical recovery is faster, hospital days are less, but it does not save lives. So as far as remdesivir is concerned, I think, it may have been unnecessarily asked as a life-saving drug. So the category of its life-saving potential is clearly not there, number one. Number two, that it may be responsible for mutants. There is no data published at all to say that. So to make such a, unless and until it is not in public domain, to make such a statement is not correct and not appropriate. And the third thing is, remdesivir has some utility in clinical recovery and length of stay of the hospital, but nevertheless, I don't put too much to it. It's not something like a magic wand. It needs a very, very limited and a restricted use drug. So both these things are more or less, if you ask me, plasma crossed out, remdesivir restricted use in a significantly small proportion of patients, which may benefit from it in terms of clinical recovery and length of stay in the hospital. When you are at a peak of a pandemic, and when the hospitals are overburdened with a lot of disease, if you give a pharmaceutical agent which may reduce the length of stay in the hospital, every day matters. You can then make that case for having another case to be treated and life to be saved. So from that standpoint, in terms of clinical recovery, as well as, and we have to go by published science and data. So from that standpoint, remdesivir still has a limited role in the use of COVID. I cannot say that it can be crossed out. It has a limited role or a restricted role. So these are restricted use agents. I hope I'm very categorically clear as far as remdesivir is concerned, as far as plasma is concerned.
Shashank, the government has said that you can take the vaccine, the second vaccine of Covishield or Covaxin much longer. Now, is it compromising science? Is it just because the quantity of vaccines are not available? And Tony Fauci also says that this is probably the right thing to do when the number of vaccines are not available. As a consumer, I feel cheated. ये adjustment science है या politics है?
No, I don't think there's any politics in it. I think it's very clear that it is a science-driven course correction. It is a science-driven course correction, and the course correction is happening because of a limited transient supply shortage. Now, what do I mean by science-driven course correction? Two things. Number one, okay, if I had 2 billion vaccines, I would give the best fit vaccine. Now, the challenge is all the vaccines available, Dr. Shetty, are emergency use authorization vaccines across the world. All these vaccines are fast-tracked. All these vaccines are early generation vaccines, and all these vaccines have limitations. So what are vaccines supposed to do? Vaccines are supposed to save lives and severe disease, but they may not prevent infections, number one. Number two, let us look at two vaccines available in India and the third vaccine which has got approved. So first vaccine is Covaxin, which is the homegrown killed vaccine. That vaccine should be given at 1 month ideally. If there is a delay or deferment beyond 1 month, I'm not comfortable with it. Let me be scientifically telling you and personally telling you, but up to 6 weeks is okay. Beyond 6 weeks, deferring or delaying the dose may not be scientifically appropriate or clinically appropriate. So as far as Covaxin is concerned, you have a finite limit beyond which you cannot defer or delay. Very, very clear, very, very categorical as science is concerned. Covishield or the AZ vaccine is a biosimilar product. It's not the same as the AZ vaccine. They have been given and allowed. Serum has been officially allowed by AZ because Serum is the largest vaccine producer in the world of vaccines. They have been taken the formula from the Oxford University and AstraZeneca, and they have made their own biosimilar vaccine. This vaccine is like COVID virus, predictably unpredictable, and its data has been very, very different in different trials. Number one, the bridging trial they have done in India is not in public domain. That has only been seen by the subject expert committee. Probably it is appropriate, but we don't have privy to that data in public domain. The data of single shot of Covishield, which is the AZ vaccine, has in a meta-analysis published in the Lancet in the month of March, showed that it can protect, even if you give one dose, 76% efficacy. If you give low dose of the Astra vaccine first dose and high dose second dose with a 1 month gap, it can have 95% protection. Most of the trials done in UK, South Africa, Brazil, United States and India were done on high dose 1 month apart, and that efficacy is somewhere around 65%. When you defer that 1 month on immunogenicity to 2 months, the data goes up to 70-75%. When it from 2 months goes up to 3 months, probably it goes up to 75%. So this, and therefore there is been a little uncertainty in terms of antibody generation. Will it protect? The wisdom which was used by the National Expert Committee for Vaccination is, when you are into an unusual situation of a severe shortage of vaccine, they want to protect a larger population. To protect the larger population, they say first give the first dose and you may delay the second dose. So delaying the second dose, even WHO has accepted. They had said 8 to 12 weeks. These people have said 12 to 16 weeks. I would put it 12 weeks is reasonable. So I think the science of delaying is reasonable, though not ideal. It is reasonable. I don't think that there is any politics into it. It's a reasonable option given in the interest of people at large, and also it is an appropriate course correction because delaying the dose will actually improve the quality of immune response. So based on that scientific logic, they have deferred it to 12 weeks based on that Lancet paper. Also remember, we are over-relying the published data and we are over-relying it on that. Now we have a large database within India. India is one of the largest populations vaccinated with Covishield. So ideally we should do a retrospective audit of people who have got it with 1 month apart, people who have got it 6 weeks apart, people who have got it with 8 weeks apart. And we will actually have that data which can be in public domain we need to do retrospective research. And I think that's something research agencies like ICMR should conduct and publish so that we will have that data. The other concern is that delaying and deferring sometimes in the times of pandemic may be the best option to do. This was done in United Kingdom in December when the peak hit them of the second surge. They delayed it up to 3 months. So delaying it up to 3 months, Covishield only, okay, has some science backing it up. So I don't think it was a non-scientific decision. It was a science-backed decision. Beyond 12 weeks, there is no data in public domain. I have gone on record on this, even on national television, that beyond 12 weeks, I have not seen that data. Scientifically, is it reasonable? Maybe it is reasonable, but I don't have preview to that data. It may be there with the experts. We have some of the best vaccine experts in the world. We have some of the best public health specialists in the world, and we are still the largest producer of vaccine, and we still are the second largest vaccinated population in the world even today. Remember, our population size is huge, and what worries me is a large proportion of our healthcare workers and frontline workers are still not vaccinated, and they need to complete their vaccination process. We need to ensure that our senior citizens above 60 are vaccinated to a large extent, and then our population above 45 is vaccinated to a large extent. In this overzealous, we need to vaccinate everybody, but in that overzealous haste of vaccine for all, we have to set priorities, and in that prioritization, we have to match the priority with the supply. Now, this is not a medical issue. Matching priorities with supply has to be done with logistics, with supply chain, and data-driven science. So that mix and match has to be done by stakeholders. And I'm reasonably certain the stakeholders, which is the central government, the various state governments, and the manufacturers, and the logistic players have to do it in a very careful manner. I personally feel between the month of July and December are going to be crucial for the Indian COVID vaccination program, and which is the largest vaccination program in the world. If we are able to get the mathematics between central, state, vaccine suppliers, and people cooperation appropriate with those 2 billion doses, I think we will be able to be successfully running a vaccine program. The third vaccine which is there in the anvil is the Sputnik vaccine. These are two adenovectors, usually to be spaced 1 month apart. So the only change which has happened, Dr. Shetty, is for the Covishield vaccine. Okay, but otherwise there is no major change.
Thank you. Do you foresee that booster doses of vaccines also may come in the near future? Because it is said that the second generation vaccine or the third generation vaccine will be much better than the first and the second. So do you see this happening in the future?
So first of all, we should not mix and match. So if you have taken a vaccine A, we should continue taking that vaccine only. And we will have better data. This is work in progress, whether we need a third dose or not. Currently, all the vaccine manufacturers are studying how long will the efficacy of the vaccine last? How long will the B cell immunity last? How long will the T cell immunity will last? And I reasonably feel that Covaxin has now in their drug controller trial added the third dose. So all those people who participated in their phase 2 clinical trial program, in a 50-50 ratio, in a research mode, they are giving Covaxin to one half and no Covaxin to other half as a third dose after 3 or 6 months. And they are studying whether what is going to be the immunogenic response, what is going to be the efficacy response. So I think that you will need a booster. The way vaccines are shipping up in COVID, it is likely like the flu vaccine, likely and probably, as I said, that we might have a annual COVID vaccine shot, which could be quadrivalent. And that possibility and probability cannot be ruled out.
Debolina is asking, there are some posts in social media that we should avoid all glucose foods in COVID patients. What is your opinion?
Not necessarily, Debolina. I think you need to be eating appropriate foods. So having foods which have some degree of carbs, which is restricted and complex carbs, or starches as they call it, which are resistant starches, having some degree of fat is appropriate. In fact, there's data which we have ourselves shown that if you have something like a monolaurate, it might be useful, but improve proteins. So in overall healing, diet plays an important role, and that is something which we know. But don't deprive the glucose or cheat the glucose. But we need to control diabetes because there are four types of diabetes in COVID, and this is becoming a cause of concern very, very aggressively. The first is people who are diabetics who get COVID, their glucose goes up very high. So they need to avoid sweets, fried food, fast food, dry fruits. People who are pre-diabetics, when they get COVID, they get converted from pre-diabetes to diabetes. The third is people who have no diabetes, no family history of diabetes, no pre-diabetes. They get COVID and they get into a hospital and they need oxygen, they are given steroid. That steroid increases the sugar. So they get a transient diabetes due to steroid. And the fourth is COVID virus per se also is a virus which not only attacks the lungs, the heart, the gut, but sometimes can also attack the pancreas and very rarely can cause pancreatic diabetes or COVID related diabetes. So these are the four possibilities due to which diabetes can go up. And controlling diabetes and sugars at fasting below 110, postprandial below 140 and is very, very important. And many a times beyond 2 or 3 tablets of diabetes, we need to give them insulin. And therefore, though COVID timetable is 2 to 3 weeks, COVID care timetable now is extended up to 3 months or 100 days. So 90 to 100 days because you need to keep your nose clean, mouth clean, and get your sugar under control and control 6 things: temperature, pulse, respiratory rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, and glucose. And all this to be connected to a digitally connected doctor. So those sat, okay, sat. So if for COVID, you have to walk the path with those 7 with a digital connectivity for 3 months or 100 days so that we prevent these unusual rare infections like the black fungus or the mold like fungus which is called as mucor. But remember, COVID can also get simple secondary infections also. So we have to take COVID care. And in COVID care, lifestyle is important. In that lifestyle, eating slowly, eating on time, eating the right food, avoiding sweets, fried food, trying to do a little bit of exercise, doing pranayama, doing some exercises to expand your lungs, doing some Surya Namaskar, doing some Uthak Baitak, doing some physical activity like just 100, but it has to be graded. The exercise has to be graded. The inspiration to expiration ratio of 2:1 has to be decided by the chest physiotherapist. We need to take their aid. We need to sleep for a good 7 to 8 hours. We need to reduce our stress. We don't have to give stress or take stress. And that's a department, Dr. Shetty was just talking on anxiety so nicely. And finally, we need to monitor and be connected. See, we need to understand that health and happiness have to go together in healing and recovery. In healing and recovery, health, and you cannot just get health if you don't get happiness. Because if you are sad and trying to achieve health, what will happen? Negative chemicals are made, which are cytokines, just like the way cytokines are made in acute COVID. Even during chronic COVID, you will make these negative chemicals or cytokines, and that will protract the illness and then lead to complications. So it's very, very crucial that we definitely pay a lot of attention to that. And Debulan, I'm so happy that you asked this question. That's something which is important.
There's one important question is after the patient has recovered from the virus, he has black spots in his cuff. Otherwise, it's absolutely fine, perfectly all right. Black spots in his cuff.
Cuff is?
Can you, cuff with the, I'm talking about expectoration.
So that you have to rule out the so-called mucormycosis, and you need to do a sampling and get the mucormycosis ruled out. Sometimes we have to do an MRI and get it sorted out. So you can't always just dismiss it, and you need to be paying attention. And it's holy, unholy trinity of diabetes, steroids, and mucor or the black fungus.
Thank you, Shashank. I have a friend, a very healthy a person who's doing exercise, living a very clean life, young in his early 50s, has got a reinfection. So, what are the precautions he should take?
So usually reinfections tend to be there which are unusual and rare, exceptional, and if the reinfection is there, you have to still treat it with COVID with extra vigilance. So there are three types of COVID we see today. One is natural infection first time. Second is a infection which occurs for the second time, which is extraordinary and rare. And third is a infection occurring after a vaccination. So these are the three types of COVID. And in these three types of COVID, okay, what is common and 99.9% is the new infection. What is uncommon and 0.001% is the reinfection or the vaccine induced infection or vaccine post-vaccine infection. So obviously 99.9% is still going to be the normal infection. This is 0.1 or 0.01% which we've seen. You just need to do exactly the same 14 to 21 day timetable for infection. If there is adequate, if the first infection was a genuine infection, then there will be some T memory cells, there will be some antibody response, and there will be a milder disease, and there would be an asymptomatic disease. So remember that if there was a real reinfection, but some people do progress. And if they progress, they have to be treated just the way we treat normal COVID. So if you are thinking of COVID, you have to treat it as COVID, and even if it is presumptive COVID, which means that it is a suspect COVID, you have to treat it as COVID only.
Shashank, you just made a very important statement that emotional distress can also lead to interleukin storm. How correct it is as of now? Because a lot of people are listening to this show, and this has a lot of implications in the sense that how should we
So
manage
I think
mental health?
you twisted the word. I said cytokine can be released if there is no happiness. So I didn't use the word emotion and I didn't use the word interleukin. So what happens is that if you are not happy, you generate some degree of cytokines which are not healthy. They are not necessarily the same cytokines which are seen during a COVID storm. These are released, these are different chemicals. Happiness chemicals are dopamine, serotonin, which is in your domain, apart from, of course, TNF alpha and occasionally the other interleukin. So interleukin is a very small pertains. See, what are the hormones of happiness? They are oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and then comes that little gamut of cytokines in which there is TNF alpha, IL-10, IL-8, IL-6, IL-1. So all these are a mixture of different chemicals, and if we don't have sufficient of them at the right places in the hypothalamus, in the amygdala, because emotion is controlled by amygdala. That's the center for, and you know it as an expert very well.
And limbic system.
And obviously the limbic system. So all that has to be, that has an implication on our immunology. So there is a whole science of psycho, neuro, immune endocrinology.
Absolutely.
And what happens is, then the body does not respond to stress appropriately. It's a tired body. Remember, after COVID, you are recovering. So you're already there, you're a wounded soldier. When a wounded soldier is recovering, you need that positivity. You need that right kind of what you call as inputs like music or like positive strokes to heal better. And who knows it better than you, Guru Anna, that if you do
Absolutely.
not have that, if you don't have that, you will just not be there. See, somebody who's unhappy, disgruntled, negative, depressed, will never be able to heal the way somebody who's happy, positive, cheerful. The other thing which I want to make a remark is, in the healing process, rest is important. People jump back to their old self. Remember, in first 100 days of COVID, you may perform at 50 to 75% of your original self, because some people take a long time, particularly those who get hospitalized. I think they take a little longer time to recover, while those who have been managed at home usually are recovering within a month. People who go to hospital sometimes take a little longer time, and that's why I always put COVID timetable as 3 months.
Thank you, Shashank. So that's beautifully explained. Not happy might cause an interleukin, not a storm, but a shift. And being positive also helps recovery much faster. So coming back to the 6 parameters we need to observe, as you said, I would still recount them for all our viewers: temperature, pulse, respiration, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, and sugar. Am I right? And
Yes.
just for everybody, I would like to recall that COVID timetable is 2 to 3 weeks, but COVID recovery timetable is 3 months. So don't rush back to your work. Don't play Superman. Don't play Tarzan, and that I think is important. The last question, Dr. Shashank Joshi, for today is that how do you see India shaping? Uh, we all like to predict, but this is not a question to elicit an astrological prediction, but it's a question to elicit a science-based prediction. As Aziz Premji said, we need good science, and based on the past experience of the whole pandemic, based on the experience of the last year, based on all the science coming from across the globe, yes, I'm surprised that Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Lanka, and others are doing probably much better. I do not know. I don't have any information. So, in this context, and in the context of a country, what is it that we will see in the next few months? And people are talking about the third wave. Can you elaborate a little more?
So first thing is that we are still in the second wave. Some geographies of India like Kerala, Maharashtra, Mumbai, or even Delhi now is seeing the early signs of a downward slope of the second wave. So clearly, India has 700 plus districts, and a reasonable proportion of them which had the wave somewhere in the first 2 weeks of April or the next 2 weeks of April, which had peaked, they are showing a downward slope. Number one. Number two, a large part of India, like the states of Karnataka, which is Bangalore, they are at the peak now. And some geographies of India, like Assam, Bengal, or Tamil Nadu, they are on the rise now. So we are seeing a very mixed pattern across the country. But by and large, there are two things. Currently, the active cases in India are around 38 lakhs, which has dropped down from 40 lakhs. We remember we have revised the ICMR guidelines of testing. So this is in the current context of testing. Usually, India has a capacity to take around 20 lakh tests a day. And if you see that, we have those active cases which are very much there. It is at the peak of its second wave. And I think I congratulate every healthcare frontline worker who has done an extraordinary job to manage 38 lakhs, 3.8 million cases in India, or maybe around 4 million cases in India. I think we salute to each one of them to manage these cases because this is an impossible target. And I think they are doing an extraordinary job. And I think in that we have been able to keep, this is a faster spreading, faster recovering virus. Our recovery rates are excellent. And even then, despite of all the challenges, we are one of the lowest case fatality rates. If you see the deaths per million, we are one of the lowest in the world. And this is not to compare and contrast at all. So I think we are just about seeing the early signs in some geographies of coming down. Now the test positivity rate is pretty high. So that test positivity rate means if 100 people have COVID, if 20 are tested positive, we call test positivity rate of 20%. So I'll give you an example of Mumbai. It was 30% in first week of April. Now it is around 5 to 7%. Once the test positivity rate comes below 5%, that geography we need to saturate with vaccination and move forward. So the unrestrictions or easing of restrictions, which is what most of India is now, has to be slow and has to be compounded or complemented by strict adherence to COVID appropriate behavior, which is double masking, which is living in well ventilated environments, airy environments, in no crowding or zero crowding, ensuring that there is distancing and sanitization maintained. And if we are able to do the big five of the COVID appropriate behavior, as we mindfully sort of unrestrict ourselves, we can definitely break the chain. So I think we are on the path to break the chain and bend the curve. So breaking the chain and bending the curve is something which we are walking the right path. Having said that, whenever we unrestrict, whenever we unlock, unlocking has to be done mindfully. We again cannot go back into a yo-yo phenomenon. We cannot become reckless and irresponsible. We now need to behave responsibly and behave in a very calm and a strategic way so that we heal, our minds heal, and India heals. We have been hit by a tsunami. We have to heal. We have to heal with happiness. There's a lot of sadness around. We need to convert that sadness into positive energy. There is COVID has affected every family of India, directly or indirectly. And it's very, very important that when India heals, world also is healing. We need to do it in a very mindful way, without anger. There is going to be grief, there is going to be anger, but we need to handle the anger and grief and channelize it into health, happiness, positivity, and at the same time, we need to ensure that we not only take care of ourselves, but our near and dear ones, our friends and families, because it's not a easy time. It's a once in a lifetime pandemic, and I'm certain that we'll come out of it. So, Anna, my humble plea to you to give your final comment on how, in times of sadness and grief, one can be happy and healthy.
Well, experiencing sadness is necessary to also experience joy and love. People who block their sadness cannot love, nor they can experience joy. So, sadness as it comes, identify it, acknowledge it, accept it, experience it, and exhaust it. And when you do that, it does not get blocked, so that the body does not need to cry. So that is the first step. Experience sadness, share it with loved ones, convey your condolences with all genuineness, and that heals the person who receives it and heals the person who also gives it. So as we leave, I would like you to just ponder were the feelings you undergo, anger and sadness, are positive energies which can be channelized towards activity, goals, and resolution of the pandemic. Anger can lead to super blaming. Anger can lead to aggression. Remember, anger is a positive emotion, aggression is a negative state. So let's our energy of anger and our energy of sadness catapult us to see to it that we take care of ourselves, our friends, our loved ones, our country, and the Mother Earth. With this, we would come to the close of the show. Anirudh, Shashank, and me would want to bid bye bye before we come again. And you may have been disappointed at 12 o'clock today. But remember, COVID also has taken a toll of all of us. And for certain reasons, very important reasons, this has been postponed to the evening. And Anirudh will tell us when will it be seen. And we'll come back again at 12 o'clock next week, as promised, to give more updates, to answer all your questions, and also to give our small nuggets of wisdom if it means something to you guys. Thank you. Anirudh, do you want to say something?
No, thank you so much. Thanks a lot for your time, Dr. Joshi and Dr. Shetty, as always. Thank you.